And we are live. It's another week. Leading women. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Let's check in. I hope everybody had a great week. Probably not. But let's do it again. I am Yalanda at Dryerbuzz, and of course dryerbuzz.com. And my cohort over there is Angela Stalkup. And man, we come to you once a week. Thank God it's just once a week. That gives us a lot of time to process what's going on in our lives. And this is where we take an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours to really figure out where we are. And I did drop Triana a message, Angela, to see if she could possibly scoot in here. So we may get her. I hadn't had an answer back, but I know she just literally came from a trip to DC. If you follow her, I know you were talking last week about some things, and she went up for I think the memorial service as well as some hearings that are going on. One thing I think we have to always be mindful of, guys, is that and ladies, I should say ladies and gentlemen in our presence, we have to always be mindful. There are hearings happening all the time. Yeah. Okay. And just because there are some things in the news cycle, some things not in the news cycle, some things in the headlines, not in the headlines, does not mean that all these things are not happening. In fact, people are more involved right now, especially as we lead up to the election. There are a lot of things prior to the election that need to get done. There's money that needs to be spent. There are decisions that need to be made on a lot of things. And so some people may not be coming back after the election. And so, just a lot to get done. It's a lot to take in. All right. So what we do here, we talk things gender specific as it relates to women across. We try to cross all the other stuff, but we go gender specific. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. Lots of topics. What do I always say, Angela? What we want to specifically look at each week what women are earning, how women are learning, and we burn through some of the topics. And some of those topics, of course, are major headlines. You know what I'm most thankful for this morning, Angela, is that millions of us did not have to go into the toxic workplaces after a night like last night. There are a lot of people who just got to roll over to their computers and log on, didn't have to deal with the water cooler, because this thing was what we saw last night. I don't think there's any other word for it than a shit show. Yeah. I've seen that in the headlines. And I woke up, went to bed, Actually, here's the question. How long did you watch? I know I turned away after all the networks allowed Trump to send out this call of stand down, stand by. I was like, okay, I can't believe they allowed something like that to air, and I know this thing wasn't immediately live, because if you're watching on television and online, there's a little bit of delay everywhere. I just can't believe that. And that tells me that they are yet again, just competing for ratings. I saw one post that said, when you're competing, in this competition of trying to get eyes and ears, yesterday, I don't know how to explain it. I feel better about it, after having worked through some of it. But go ahead, come on, jump on it. I usually let people what we talked about last week, but we got to go full on into this.
Let's just go straight on in. Check out our recordings. It's always good and interesting. What you're talking about, I had to process it, right? I had to sit with it and lay in my bed, look at the ceiling with it, because I didn't watch the whole thing, same as you. I couldn't take the chaos of it. I just could not take, and to see 3 old white men yelling at each other about
which three are you talking about?
I'm talking about Biden, Trump, and Chris Wallace, right? Chris Wallace is over 70. And so I'm like, these 3 white men are out here talking, and I really, if nothing else comes from this, I hope that we can be done with old white men being in power after this. Whatever we're in, I hope that the visual of that, to me, when I think back to when what would have been 2008, so 2007, 2008, when it was Hillary and Barack, right? So and that was the big runoff, and you barely heard about the Republican side because it was all the time you would be seeing either Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama speaking, right? And when we finally got it settled, right? So here we have Barack Obama, and then it was what? Who did he run against? It was
McCain, wasn't it?
McCain, but that was the second one. Who did he run in the? Yeah, McCain, and then Romney. I can't remember.
Romney.
To get to McCain.
Oh God, I was trying to think about that earlier, and I was
so they ran against Romney.
Yeah.
You get to McCain, and I was like, white men again. And I mean, really, I was like, and Sarah Palin, she doesn't count. She doesn't count, other than she was an annoyance. But I was just like, wow, it was so nice to see something other than old white men on this all the time. And so I thought this to me is just like now the pendulum swing, is like peak old white men and Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. And I'm like, they're all the old white men. It's like, and I was like, I really do believe that the younger generation is just going to be like, no, white men are canceled. Old white men will be canceled in this next generation. God help you. I mean,
that's what we thought. That's what we thought when the race took off. Because I mean, if you remember the entire field, and everybody was really shocked that we were looking at this entire field, but people were feeling like we need. And I mean, me myself included, is like I think we thought we needed Biden. And I think we realized, at the first couple of outings, it's like, oh, maybe not so much, Well, and I think people are still pretty shocked right now that this is how it ended up. That the optics from last night is where we go. And you know what is? I really wanted to come on and talk about our generation because we came and Angela and I are going to talk. We're probably going to talk about this forever. Being the children of boomers. Yeah. The torch just really never truly got passed down, to our generation, which is why there was a lot of focus on the millennials because, this whole thing of skipping a generation, except for the fact that, and if you look at Barack Obama, when he came into prominence, and I mean, I remember talking with civil rights leaders just up until they finally got on board. They were not on board with Barack Obama, and literally telling him, first of all, he didn't come through the civil rights movement because you couldn't come through the civil rights movement. Nothing could come through the civil rights movement, which is why we're here today. Because it was their movement, it was theirs, and they were letting you know ours. Even though it was supposed to be for the benefit of a race and the benefit of the planet and the benefit of the movement and the benefit of all this, it was still theirs. And they had such an ownership of it. Even to this day, the legacy, as many of them are passed on. And we started out 2020, with that losing John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, and now even RBG, they're in their 80s and 90s, which tells you that there was no passing of the torch. And John Lewis had been asked forever, who are you grooming? Who are you grooming? And look at what we have in the race to fill his remaining time. Let alone trying to prepare for somebody to go after that seat on the long term, because all these things are long term, even though people are begging for a time limit. So I even now, as our younger people are getting ready to deal with these old white men, and the conversations and watching the conversations that they're having, they're looking at us like we have nothing for them. Like we have nothing. And Bernie Sanders was on The View earlier.
I didn't see it. Yalanda messaged me, and I was like, "So are you watching The View?" I'm like, "No."
There were okay. Let me. There were two different takeaways. My thing was, I felt like Bernie was like, "F y'all," I mean, that's literally like how I felt. Okay, so one person said to me, because I felt like Bernie was like, "Hey, you made your choice."
You made your bed, you sleep in it.
You made your choice, because they were trying to get him to, claim. They were trying to get him to disclaim Trump and claim Biden, and he was like, hey, there are many opinions that I have that Biden has, and we just don't agree. He left it. He left the interview at that.
Wow.
Many of Biden's opinions are not mine, is what he said. At the same time, all of Trump's opinions are not mine, but many of Biden's opinions are not mine. Literally saying, "Hey, let's just get through this 4 years." And for whatever it is, because it is. So one response on Twitter, Ramona Griggs said, "Not at all. This is how you disagree on specifics, but still agree on saving the country. They're on the same broad page. They're working together against Trump. That's pretty clear." It wasn't clear. If I walked away with, you walked away with that, and I walked away with this, it's clearly not pretty clear,
Right. And to understand the background of the Bernie supporters and the Bernie bros, particularly, they're all saying they will not vote for Biden. So in this election, so like if in 2016 we had this big data reveal that Trump had 200, the Trump campaign had 200 million American names and demographics, deep demographics, for the purposes of social media ads, and that 3.5 million Black Americans were marked as deterrents. Their campaign strategy was deterrence, deter them from going to the polls, right? However, there were white voters that were also marked deterrents, right? So this election, the deterrence vote is the Bernie Sanders vote, right? Is the 30% that was really deeply involved with Bernie Sanders. And so the deterrence campaign this time is as much on that group. So when Bernie Sanders, this group is online constantly saying they will not vote for Biden. And the disinformation message that's going out to them is they're both the same, right? This is also going out to Black voters. They're both the same. They're all white men. But also to this group of white voters, particularly white male voters, they're both the same, right? And so when you tell me Bernie Sanders stood up there and did not wholeheartedly endorse Joe Biden and say, we got to get this done. He basically, I almost replied to you, deterrence. That was going to be my reply when you told me what that was. So I saw it on Twitter. I was going to tweet white deterrence. That's the deterrence message. And if he is not at this point just saying, we have got to get rid of that insane dictator that is uncontrollable, right? Then he basically that's pro-Trump. If
his message was basically these two men have a position that I want.
Yeah. And what he is saying and what others are saying and white voters is that basically there are worse things than racism. That's what they literally come out and say that.
And that's American. This is America. That's the thing that's the sound that's been resounding forever. There are worse things. But basically, let's get these people on board, right? Because the black women not gonna change the vote. You're just not gonna convince. And we were talking about this. You're not gonna convince us to vote with. You just can't. Okay, so Trump has his say, for instance, look at all the time and money put into Omarosa. Yeah. Okay, as a liaison to bring white women over to this, and it's like, dude, you can't keep to bring black women over to Trump. It's like, dude, you can't keep doing these things and expect black women to get on board. And it did not happen. It did not work. And black women are not in the audience of the two. Who are the two women? What are their names? I don't know. The very animated black women that are always
Diamond and Silk.
Diamond and Silk. I know. I keep trying to remember stripper names. Diamond and Silk. I mean, that's what it is. It's like, it's literally two stripper names from a movie or something, And welcome in, Tanisha. Black women are not with the foolishness. No. We are not with the foolishness. But the thing about it is, we do have the influence, which is why in the 2016 election, they went online and tried to basically have this underground movement of looking like black women and going into groups and so forth, because we do influence a lot. And so now there's this energy again to try to put this in our lap, because if you fix it, think about your tears. If black women fix this and it's okay for everybody else. When they say all the tide rises all boat, we are the tide. Okay. I mean, it's we're not a boat. And I need black women to realize that we're not a boat, we're not in the boat. We are the tide. And if we're coming in and going out, then everybody else is good. That's how they look at this. And that's what they wanted to wake up this morning and say, hey, let's put this in the laps of black and brown women. And brown women are like, they let me tell you, they were very well represented because Megan McCain is finally on maternity leave.
Finally had her baby. Yeah.
Yeah. So oh my God, and her name just slipped my mind. Very outspoken from Florida. What's her name? That she was on The View at one time.
Is it
Navarro.
Anna Navarro.
Anna Navarro. She is sitting in, and I don't know if they actually would bring her in anyway, because they actually have two in there. I think Sarah is in for Megan, but then Anna Navarro was on there. And Anna Navarro wastes not a minute, not a breath, is speaking out against Trump, particularly for Latino women and Latina women. And so,
and Anna Navarro is a Republican. She's a Republican, and she was 2016. She was like, I'm not getting behind this man. So
it's crazy, but which is why you have to listen, because oftentimes you think of them as a voting bloc, and they're not a Democratic voting bloc, and there is a very staunch their ties to the Republican Party. And so that's where her conversation was coming from. So, you kind of like, okay, rock with that. If they're not there, then you can kind of bet on the fact that they're not going to vote, but that doesn't mean other places on the ballot, other places within the election. And I think we have to get to a point where we just stop looking for these voting blocks to be the old school demographic. Old school voting blocks are not a thing right now. Everybody is like, what is their issue? We're getting back to being issue oriented. And what are some of the leading issues? And I think Black women need to have more of a manifesto on that. And we've been saying that probably for a while now, even before Barack Obama. It's like, especially with the selection of when they were selecting a vice presidential candidate. We didn't have really truly a manifesto. People got mad because Ice Cube and others are saying, hey, listen, wait a minute, they just want our vote for what?
Right.
For nothing. Not promising anything.
Well, it makes me think about our leading man, Zach, who was like, placing your vote is like putting your order in at the drive-through. But if you don't do anything about it, if you don't, you got to drive up to the window and pick it up. So to extend that analogy with Black voters, it's like, may I take your order, please? And then you get to the window, and it's like, well, you don't have your order. You didn't order.
Right.
But I paid. Right. It's like, no, you really order.
Oh, wait, you really wanted a burger?
You really wanted that burger? Oh, we didn't make that burger. And we got to make these chicken sandwiches first. No, I mean, really, it's and so to say that to hold those elected officials in, hold them responsible for those promises is 100% important. And so I think that if nothing, well, I'm not gonna say if nothing else, because I could say if nothing else about 500 things, it feels like, but to say this is good. This is good for our, in the sense that this is raising the awareness to a greater audience, that again, to white audiences. Let me speak as a white person.
What is the dictate right now for white people?
I don't know. I'm ready to dole y'all it out of here and come on over and join. Can I do that?
You'd have to go before the delegates. And I think at this point, all meetings with the delegates have been canceled. You're on the list, but and then she froze.
I see my whole screen went black. There you go. But no, I think that it's again, it's divided, right? So you have
who was Trump trying to appeal to?
I think to white men. I think particularly to white men. But also, there's this, and it's the QAnon.
Hold on, because we got to break this down, and I'm breaking this down because the channel that I have now is TikTok, right?
Right.
And I think this is why Trump doesn't want TikTok, because when I go on TikTok, it's an entirely different world. And I'm pretty sure there's a lane, and there's some I'm like, oh, I never want to see that user again. But it's not just, and we know, you and I both know, media in the hierarchy is everything is for white men at the top, right? I need to know when Trump decided he would participate in this debate, you had to. I don't think he expected Biden to do as bad as he did, but he
Mm-hmm.
knew he wanted the national stage, and I don't think
Mm-hmm.
it's just white men. I don't think we could say that, and I'm giving myself pushback on that because I would love to take that broad brush and just stroke,
Well,
one broad
yeah.
stroke. But it's something else. There is
Well,
something
here,
else that he
yeah.
is appealing to.
Well,
And it's
let's.
not economics.
No, and I can I'll follow that up, right? Is to say he is appealing to a style of leadership that is
Mhm,
based on dominance, right? And it's classically white supremacist, it's classically patriarchy, right? And so this is why it can appeal to, to anyone, male or female, who thinks that power and strength comes from power over and domination, right? And so
mhm,
there's a whole philosophy of thought, right, of the two
mhm,
sort of two poles and then people in between of how they interpret power, right? And
mhm,
so there are those, and I think about Watchmen, right? And the whole point of Watchmen being you have 4 characters, right, who are engaging with this idea of having godlike powers, right? You have the original Dr. Manhattan, and really it would be 5 because then we have our updated Dr. Manhattan. But Dr. Manhattan, who has the power, he didn't ask for it, it was an accident. And he doesn't really know what to do with it, right? He sort of he's almost as a victim to it, right? When he,
mhm,
he can't even control his own destiny. Then you have a white male supremacist who's like, I'm going to take this power and I'm going to use it for my benefit. Then you have Lady True, right? Who's like, I'm going to take this power and I am going to force everyone to be good, right?
mhm.
But again, from us, like, me, right? So when you finally get to Angela Abar at the end, who is bringing the mother energy, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, she's a tough woman, a police officer, but she's looking at how. And so when at the end, when Lugaza says to her, when her grandfather says to her, he was a good man, but he could have done more with it. We end up with this final, and this is the creators of the series say the final choice would be, what would it look like if you had particularly a black woman who had this sort of god power? What would she do with it? And she would fix things, right? So I
We're not
think that
we're not
we're
fixing this.
well, but that's right. But the point of it is this is not what's going to happen here. But
Mhm,
the idea is what do you do with your power, right? And so
mhm,
there's a
mhm,
whole school of thought, and it's not just white people; it's all races, all backgrounds, whatever. That a powerful person is one who can dominate ruthlessly, right, and can
mhm,
crush their opponent. And
mhm,
that is who Trump was appealing to. Trump was appealing to anybody who thinks that a strong leader basically will go in and be rude and crude and crush the enemy. Because you take Biden in this, I mean, the big thing is him, he's senile, like you whatever. He's clearly not, right?
Clearly
But
not.
because Trump was attacking and attacking and attacking and never let him finish his point, he seemed bumbly and off, right?
He
Didn't
seemed um
you said he seemed tired, right?
he seemed tired, but the thing I found interesting is he seemed almost Obama like,
Mm-hmm.
like he's been when he was with Obama, he was so subdued, you
Yeah.
know, and we loved when he would get out of pocket. We needed
Yeah.
him to get out of pocket last night. He not rude, he was what's the word? Oh my God, I can't think of the word I
Well,
want to use. He was
but anyway,
polite. He was
he
too
was,
he was too
but
polite.
he was
Is
polite,
what he was.
and when he would come at him, he'd snipe at him, right? And
Yeah,
that's not the same. That's not the same. Now, I personally think that portrayal of power, as shown by Trump, is horrible and unappealing, and is not what true power is. Dominance is not power.
but
Dominance is control.
Trump has, and you know what? And I don't think that Trump ran on this. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is all that was left for Trump, and it's what Trump thinks worked.
Mm-hmm.
I truly don't believe, because if you look at it, this is not even what got Trump elected. Like,
Mm-hmm.
white women got Trump elected, but
Yeah.
you don't see him doing. He can't stand women, so you don't
No.
even see him appeal. He didn't get on that stage last night for the Karens, right?
Nope.
Knowing that those are the women those are the people those are the votes that got him elected. He has gone away from that. He wants this power over something, and I think because what racism is basically bullying, I think that he has been bullied into this, and it's all that he has left. Because literally, what I thought? Here's what I thought a Trump in power would be. I thought it would be the billionaires, but then of course we kind of find out it's like he's actually kind of broke. So I really thought this was going to be the one. I thought he was running on when he first was trying to get in office. I thought he was really running on with the 1%. The men were going to come and take back this country. It would be him and Bezos and a few others, and they were going to get us all this in line with how they wanted to see this country ran as a business. That didn't win for him. That didn't get him ratings. It didn't get him applause. It didn't get him headlines. It didn't get him on a national stage. The thing that keeps him in the headlines and that keeps the cameras focused on him and the microphones open is this racism and is this hate. And I think he just doubled down on it. And I think he doubled down on it yesterday because, again, he did nothing to appeal. Even appointing this judge, here he has a chance to appeal to white women and appoint a judge for them, and still it's not there. They come right again back with the abortion issue. I don't understand why the abortion issue leaves and everything. Still not a bit, no business. Here's a man supposed to know the art of the deal, and he's not gotten America a great deal. But the thing about it is, there are some points that he could say as a conservative and as a Republican. Here's where this country was. He didn't even come in and say, well, continuously before the pandemic or before COVID, because this is where another issue with he messed up. He could have just said, hey, listen, he could run right now and say, hey, I messed up because every president has done it. I messed up in my first term. Give me a second term to fix it, right? He could literally run on that and appeal to everybody but racism and hatred and terror. And I'm not even going to say racism and hatred because it's beyond that. It's terrorism.
Yeah.
I'm using that word forever now.
Yeah.
He wants to now run on his second term on terrorism.
Yep.
He said to terrorists, homegrown terrorists yesterday, stand down and stand by. Stand by for what? To get hurt again? To lose again? Because you didn't win in the first time, right?
Right.
So what you don't want to do is you don't want to really get people to that point because that don't end well. And we got a history of it not ending well. But again, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing that I think you're talking about, who is this appealing to? Is there's this idea of gamification, right? Is that you turn everything into a game. So it's like you earn badges, right? This has been applied to all kinds of stuff, like a weight loss app, and you get a badge, and I got an award. That we've gamified politics. We've turned politics into a game. This was even before Trump, right? With all the punditry and whatever. People used to not follow politics the way they do, right? But then it became like, it's like you're going to study up on your teams, right? And everybody's now got their team. It makes me think about team loyalty, right? And once you're in with your team, you bitch about your team, but don't anybody come against your team. And to me, he was appealing to those who like the gamification of it. And so it's like, like a boxing match, right? Oh, he got a hook in, he got a blow in, he got a hit in, he got a hit in. And they don't care if the other guy hits back, right? But it's like, who hit hardest, right? Who got the best one-liner? And the zingers, the zingers, right? And so it's like, okay, who won, right? And so we say, okay, who won was the one who got the most takedowns. Well, that's not what our politics should be about. In fact, if anything, our political debate and discourse should be a little bit boring because it should be informing us, right? It should not be entertainment. But when we made news entertainment, then politics had to become some form of entertainment. It became a sport, right? So we have approached politics like sports, only politics is not a game. People are dying right now because of the gamification of politics, but that's who he was appealing to. And there are people that will be like, yeah, you know what? Because they're going to look at Joe Biden because he's not in that aggressive gutter. I have a friend who said, you can't get down in the gutter with a gutter rat. Gutter rat's going to win, right? Who, watching Trump being a gutter rat, right? And it's like, well, he won. And it's like, no, he didn't. He didn't win. We all lost. Everyone lost.
Yeah,
Anyway, I see you
that's
got a
it.
comment.
That's exactly. Yeah, we got a couple comments coming in. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let's recap. You are watching Leading Women Weekly. Angela and I pause during the week and ask leading women to check in 1:30 Eastern Time, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, West Coast. And again, look what's going on the West Coast. Did that even come up last night? Belinda said
No.
that's exactly what it is because the people that have him by the balls financially. And then Tracine, let's welcome in Tracine as a viewer. Bernie Sanders supporters need to vote and vote for Joe Biden. Don't do what they did in 2016.
Yep.
And that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. But again, we were asking, as Angela talked about last night. Last night was a game. We all sat by. We all had our popcorn. Some people had their drink. Some people drank too much. Some people left in the first half, the first quarter, the final. Some people made it all the way to the final. Some people stayed and went into overtime with all the pundits and so forth. I just can't do the pundits. I can't.
And and then everybody's on Twitter. Like I was late. I was a few minutes late. So I looked on Twitter. I'm like, see what's happening before I turned it on. And my whole Twitter feed were just one lines, which is like, this is awful. This is a nightmare. This is a shit show. Oh my God, what is happening? And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And then I looked at it and I thought, yes, this is terrible. This is ineffective. I'm not going to keep watching. But I thought I'm also going to quit following on Twitter because people are still live tweeting it like they're watching somebody. I saw somebody, I think it was Andrea Amir, my friend out of Las Vegas, who said this is like watching a Real Housewives reunion. And I'm like, they're tweeting it like they're watching the Real Housewives, right? And now we know that's mostly fake, right?
Yeah.
So people look at this and I said, Trump comes out of the world of wrestling, right? Where people know it's fake, mostly fake, right? But they still enjoy the thrill of it. And I thought that's what was happening. And I said, and these people that are tweeting all night long, like, I'm like, you are into it. You are participating in the game of it. And you are giving this air and audience. And I'm like, I said I wasn't going to do it. Then I went on and I was like, man, and said my stuff. I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. Right. I said, I'm not going to do it because it all feeds it. Trump is like a flame and any attention, to your point, he just wants ratings. He doesn't care if people like him. He doesn't care if they hate him as long as they're talking about him. And we're not talking about Joe Biden. We're not talking about what the future is with the Democratic Party. We're not talking about what changes can happen. And as long as the message is not Trump is just Trump, right?
And here he doesn't have to do any work.
No.
He has not in the past 3 years. I mean, almost 3.9, I believe we're at. I love when he said the 47 months. So funny. I was like, okay, but anyway, and he really hasn't had to do anything, man. We are definitely getting some viewers and some viewer comments. Can you see that? Because I got this new light and it's coming.
Yeah, I got it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. It says, I also think Biden missed a key opportunity when comparing the different styles of conventions when he did not mention the death of Herman Cain, who attended an open convention. Belinda, you are 100% correct. Like when he said, you're not going to mention, why didn't Biden come back and say Herman McCain? But
everybody online was like, how did he not mention that? And not only Herman, but several others. Yeah.
There were lots of missed opportunities. And I believe it's because, again, Joe Biden did as well as probably any decent human being could do in that circumstance. But because Trump was just interrupting, he never got to finish a point. And that was Trump's strategy. He only did I think I said 2.5 hours of debate prep. He didn't prep issues. He prepped on tearing down Joe Biden. All he wanted to do was keep him off guard, and keep Chris Wallace off guard, right? By interrupting, snipe. And so,
two more comments.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We got Stephanie Scott Nelson, who says congressional Republicans are currently holding hearings on FISA warrants and not addressing the urgency of people not having housing, income, nor food. And this goes back to what you're talking about with Triana being, coming back from hearings. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening. Again, that we're not, because this distraction's happening. We're not aware. And like I said, this FISA warrant, they're still talking about Hillary Clinton. My God, and it's like this, instead of addressing the fact that people are, like you say, they're being evicted. They're people in this country because of COVID. They're going hungry. People are dying because of COVID. Hello. Just saw a thing about the Hurricane Sally and the people impacted by the flame. Do we hear anything about that? Right. the thousands and thousands of people impacted by that. So good, very good point, Stephanie. This is, they're not even talking about what needs to happen. Is there another one?
Yeah,
Okay.
Belinda was just saying to push on the point of importance of wearing the mask if he had talked about the COVID. And I remember watching Trump's face when Biden finally started to go in on the COVID when they were really
Mm-hmm.
getting to have that discussion, because I kept watching Trump as he was searching for the next thing he was going to say and do. And that's an issue that he knows that he cannot stand on, which is why he kept throwing out these other things. Like he knew, throwing out the law enforcement. You need to say law enforcement. When I can imagine that there are a number of, and I don't know, it's such a sensitive topic, but I just wish that Biden would have had some much better pushback, particularly on law enforcement, because you can say law enforcement, you got to say Black Lives Matter. You can say Brown and Black Lives Matter. Lives Matter. It's just, he didn't really have, and this comes down to everything in this country. Again, what I don't want to see is I don't want us going into this election think that Black people have to fix this, because we oftentimes, since for the past 50 years, every time when America has a problem dealing with, as they love to say, the chickens coming home to roost, they go like, okay, well, yeah, Black people have something far worse going on. And it's like, no, we're not.
Yeah.
I'm like the Bernie brothers. I'm like, no, we're not fixing this one. This is not on us.
Yeah.
We were not the ones that put Trump in office. It was the media giving him national stage all the time, and it was the white female voters who felt like they didn't have power anymore, that they had lost something, so they came, sided with this man. And it's like, we can't fix that. And let me tell you, everybody else, this is another thing too, we need to be looking at this electoral college. We can all here in Georgia, everybody can go and show up and vote. It's not going to persuade us, it's not going to persuade the state any more than if we vote the same way we did in the last 2, 3, 4 elections.
And this is where
that's all we can do.
Why? And this is where we have it very close. And now I'm going to make my argument for the census. I'm going to give you your last argument for the census, Yalanda.
Which is also on the table. That was something that Biden talked about this morning as well.
And the census has been extended, although this today may be the last day, but I think they're getting it. They've had it re-extended to October. The census is what determines how many electoral votes your state gets, because the census determines how many representatives each state gets. Georgia is on track to be underrepresented because of underreporting in the census. So when you said the government knows exactly how many Black people there are, they know exactly how many people there are. The state knows. But the only legal way to put that into the official record for the purposes of funding and representation is through the census. That's the only number that counts. So the state of Georgia is already looking at this and saying, and because our governor's stupid, we are going to lose $500 million per year in Medicare and Medicaid funding because we have underreported on the census, right? That we would be due because of increase in our population. And we will probably lose electoral votes because we will lose representatives. And in most states, your representatives are going to tend to be Democratic, especially in states that are undercounted. So if you don't want to participate, if you want to be able to have more influence in the electoral college, then you have to participate in the census. And so Georgia being a purple state, it's neck and neck, Biden and Trump here. We're a state that could go Democratic. If we had more electoral votes, we would be more influential on the political stage, because everybody's like, well, why isn't Georgia more in play, right? Because we have.
Answer me this.
Yeah.
If we all fill out our census, how soon does that take effect?
That would be the next year, within the next year. So it would be the next 2 years would be when we have our next election for the House of Representatives, right?
Okay.
We would start to see new seats opening up.
The same people who are sitting back really quiet in this election, when you talk about that they didn't have to turn around and run in the next 2 years, and the people that are also quiet in this is the people that are also on the ballot. Belinda is having a fit over there because she's trying to type the word and she keeps typing the word stop. But she, and so she's having a fit in the comments. But she said, I think she was saying Biden was also caught. Oh, Trump also caught Biden off guard when he talked about his son. It clearly shook him. Understandable. He stooped to his level and didn't want to
Well, when
stoop
he
to his
called his son a
level.
junkie, I mean, again, there's
Yeah.
no low that Trump won't go
Hmm.
to. And
Hmm.
it's true, if that shook Joe Biden, then
And that was one of the things that was said on the View. In this again, back to the gamification, like you said, people expected him to go to some of the lows that Trump did, and when you
Mhm.
don't, and you shouldn't have to, but
Right.
when you don't, this is what the next day, this is what happens. Because people said he clearly could have called out Trump's kids. It's
Yep.
like his kids. Biden had a son that served. Trump's kids hadn't served. In fact, one of the top conversations on there is about one of the tweets now is about his son's pre-debate discussion, and people were talking about, was he high, was he on
Mhm.
drugs?
Yeah.
Those are some of the
Well,
discussions. But
everything Trump accuses somebody of is true of him. So if he said
and
your son's a junkie, he's got a junkie son. That's
he's got
it.
a junkie son. But see,
That's
that
it.
comes down to the whole thing of this
Because he
whole
had.
race, and comes down to America. It's like things that people are throwing, when people throw
Mhm.
things out at you,
Yeah.
it's a reflection of them.
Yeah.
It's them.
But
He's thinking you should have a junkie son because he has a junkie son. You should have hatred because he is hatred. Everything that he is, everything that
Mhm.
Trump is and has become in this thing is because it's just who he is. Like everybody wanted him to condemn white supremacy. And I'm like, can we please stop saying supremacy? Because supremacy is
Yeah.
not what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not afraid of not being, you're not the supreme being. Let's just go and say that. We're
Yeah.
talking about this terrorism
Yeah.
that's been going on in our country. And this man knows that he is, and it's not even about, because it did not get him the vote.
Mm-mm.
Okay. And it's not going to get him the vote this time around. What it will get him, so that he does get the vote, it gets him on a national stage. It gets him retweeted. It gets him exposure. It's not going to get him the vote. These half of the
No.
people don't even know where to go vote. But
No.
it gets him the attention, and this man
It's
is attention seeking.
he really is, and he gets his power from that. And so I got really 2 points on that. One, I think that the debates have become dangerous, and I don't think they should. I would be perfectly content for Joe Biden or the people who organize them to say we're not going to do this, because it's a relic of an older time, right? Even in modern time, the debates have become more of a game, a sniping match, whatever. They were meant to be opportunities for people to have uninterrupted time to express their opinion, express their point of view, and have it countered. And that comes out of high school and college debate, right? It comes out of law school. So many of our political people were lawyers. It comes out of law, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is zero application to Trump. He's never going to use the debate platform the way it's meant to be used. He's just going to use it to stir up chaos, because he rules by chaos. You ask, what was he trying to do? He wanted it to be chaotic because it emboldens his base and it discourages people like me and you, right? And it wears us down to where we feel like there's nothing, we really do become convinced there's nothing we can do, right? And that's what he wants. That's the deterrence campaign of it, is he wants to convince all the rest of us that there's nothing we can do and that it doesn't matter, and that look at Biden, it's not going to matter. And we have to be very careful to not give into that
Mm-hmm.
despair. And
Mm-hmm.
it may not be any different. This is my point. And like, I'm not going to even say that Biden would be any better. I mean, he will be. Blah, 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 blah.
Well,
But
Biden needs
but
to know that he was not selected. Nobody
no,
selected him to be polite.
but
This is
these
not a polite
systemic
situation.
problems. Trump didn't invent racism. Trump didn't invent police brutality. Trump didn't invent income
Which
inequality.
was, in fact, a point that Trump scored on
Yeah,
last night when they even
yeah.
tried to bring it up. He was like, because I mean, I know I'm looking down my feed, and you know me, the last 2 years I spent
Mm-hmm.
blogging in the streets, going,
Yeah,
in fact, not even 2 years, 4, 6, 8 years. I got stuff coming up on my timeline that's reminders going back 11 years. So this is something that's always been going on. And then to allow Trump to even score on that. What
I know, to
Biden
let
didn't
him
know
have
how
that
to
point.
do.
Again,
Yeah, what Biden
back to the
didn't know
gig.
how to do was to detract from, to take away those topics from Trump, because he was able to say, "Hey, listen, this didn't just happen on my watch; it happened on your
On
watch."
yours.
And you also wrote some of these laws that are
Right.
out there. And Biden, coming out trying to act like he's still trying to run on the fact that he had humble beginnings. It's like, but
Right.
no, you need to run on the fact that you just spent the last 50 years, 40 some years in office, and talk about bringing that experience. What have you learned?
Experience.
Even if you were on this side or the wrong side of
Right.
history a number of times, to be able to stand in front of the American people now and say what you have learned. Because what we're trying to do is to get, and there are a lot of us have been on the wrong side of a number of things. When you can't
Absolutely.
yet stand there and say, okay, well, I'm on the right side now because I have learned the difference. I have learned the difference between right and wrong. That's a podium. That's a platform that he could run on, and he wasn't prepared to do that.
And things will not change until white people learn to admit that they were wrong. That's just
And
full
that's what's
stop.
not happening. Yeah, that's
It's
the
not
part
going
that's
to
not
change,
happening.
right?
Mm-mm.
It's in there. It will be slow change because, to your point, it's not black people can't fix this. It's not on black women to fix
Right.
this.
That's what I was like.
It's
Don't
white
wake up
people
in the
got to
morning.
fix it, and
Don't
that
wake up
means
in the morning
white
thinking
people
black
have to
women are
admit they
gonna
were
do one
wrong.
thing.
It's like, we
Right.
were wrong. This was wrong, and we can change. And if that doesn't happen, we just get stuck in the same old spiral. And this is where the selection of Biden, I was really very much opposed to it, because there were other candidates that,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
white candidates,
That would
Elizabeth
have
Warren,
meant
that
change.
will
That would have meant a
absolutely,
change. Yeah.
who admitted, when
Mm-hmm.
I, at one point, I believed this. Elizabeth Warren was a Republican. One time I believed this, but I was informed and I learned, and now I believe this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
we've got to, if we don't have a vision of that, then again, they say
But
we're just going to spin our
again,
wheels.
how do we get here? And read Belinda's comment, because my
Yeah.
question is, again, how do we get here? Go ahead.
Well, and I think she's leading into it. She says, "I'm waiting on Harris and Pence. Who is Pence, and where did he come from? Just want to hear what his voice sounds like. Does he even have an opinion? He is he is super duper right wing,
Mm-hmm.
evangelical.
Mm-hmm. Isn't he here today? Is he here today
I
or
don't
tomorrow?
know.
I know he
I
is
am
headed.
sure. Well,
He
because
may be here
Georgia is
today.
very much in play, but I was like, I feel like Kamala Harris is the future, right? She's the future for the
Yeah.
whole government,
But
right?
again,
She's
we
our
don't
age, right?
we
So
don't
she's
need her to come and be polite.
no,
She
and
has
I think
to
she
hit
will
hard.
handle her business.
You
We've
think?
seen her in
Debate
all of
forum.
these hearings. When she was in these involved in these hearings, and she, again, a lawyer, right? She knows how to be very direct,
Mm-hmm.
very on point, but without being rude or whatever. I really do believe that this will be even though, let's say, when do you even hear Pence speak other than go, yes, sir, no, sir? But Pence was governor of Indiana, so I think he can talk. But we'll be
Yeah, I
interested.
think, and I've watched him. I've watched him quite a bit, and I think both of them have a demeanor that's
Mm-hmm.
very different from the two that we saw
Oh,
last
and they
night.
won't, and it will not
Um,
be any. It will not be snip, snip, snip. It will be
mm-mm,
more of a. They're both classic old school
mm-hmm.
politicians. It'll be more in the form of the kind of debate that we are accustomed to. But you said it. You hit it. You always do, Yolanda. When you talked about the optics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last night was about optics. Both of these candidates were going. It didn't, because nothing new was said, nothing new was learned. But it's who
Mm-hmm.
looks like they are a winner, who looks strong, who looks like they should be president. That's all that was about. Optics can be bad. Optics, though, can be very good. And that's where I
Mm-hmm.
go back to when we had, we had Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Our eyes got used to seeing something different, right? And I think seeing a woman, and a black woman at that, going against a white man is going to be an optic that the country is going to say, I like it. Just
But
like when
again,
in,
see that right there. That's the part that makes me mad. Is like, why do we need that
well, it
as an
doesn't, and I
option?
don't think it could have been. And Yolanda, not my point
You,
is, it
you,
could be
'cause you know,
Julian
I need to
Castro.
convince.
It could have been
Girl, you
Julian
just
Castro. It could have been Pete Buttigieg. It could be anybody who's not an old
but it,
white man. Is is where I'm going, right?
Right. Okay,
And
they're not there. They lost as well.
well,
And, I'm just gonna say because it's a trigger for
yeah,
me
yeah,
because
and I don't want
it's
to
a
trigger
thing
you.
about hey, because it's a fact, right? We can handle it. I
Mhm.
just don't want us to have to.
Well, and
I'm just so tired of this country thinking that we, it it has to stop because we did not get us here. And
no,
Belinda said, y'all, nobody said she was talking about again about the optics. And I think a lot of people woke up wondering. I don't think that Biden was sick. I think Biden still has grief. Biden still
yeah.
has a very deep wave of
Oh,
grief that
you
he's
see it
going.
when he talks
And,
about
yeah,
Bo.
in and out of. Here's another comment here. Let's grab Stephanie. Is that Stephanie there?
Hmm.
Go ahead, grab her.
Yeah, I've got a little delay on my screen. It says when the Democrats have control of the House and the Senate, they need to push for their agenda just like the Republicans. Absolutely agree. And this is where it's not just about the president, right? We need to get in here, particularly in Georgia. We've got to get behind Raphael Warnock. We got to get behind John Ossoff. We've got to take over.
I
We
am
got to get
so loving Raphael
we
Warnock is in
oh,
this.
and I tell you, I have a very good friend who's a lifetime member at Ebenezer, and so I have he would invite me to
I
stuff,
really hope
and
now what
he's got a good reputation, and that's what I thought. I was like, I know he's got a stellar reputation prior
mhm.
to even stepping into the
And he's
scene. And
running against Loeffler,
well,
is
it's actually what's called a jungle primary. It's 20 of them running in for the one seat, right? So we had
this
two.
is not the John Lewis seat though, right?
No, this is the oh God, Isaacson. This is Johnny Isaacson's seat that Kelly Loeffler has now.
And this is why I'm so upset with this because Johnny Isaacson, old school Atlanta, okay, old
Mm-hmm.
school Atlanta, far reaching, literally tried to give so much heads up to the fact that is it him
Mm-hmm.
that was coming out? Is it Johnny Isaacson that was coming out, or is it one that I'm trying to think now because it's two of them. It's two that we need to take over that Republican, right?
Right. So
But
so the
I
other
think
one is
Isaacson
Johnny Isaacson retired because he was ill,
retired.
right?
Okay,
And he
because
was
if you
sick.
remember during the State of the Union, Keisha Lance Bottoms went to D.C. at his invite.
Yeah.
So that let me know. And here's where again it was an opportunity for Stacey, and Stacey did not want to apparently
Yeah.
just trying to
Yeah.
remain in the running for the vice presidential option. That clearly would have been a wave, a blue wave there for her to
Right.
ride. And people are still
Uh,
trying to figure out why she did not.
yeah. But let's say hi to Dr. Tachi. She said
Yes.
hi. And
Hello.
but to understand what's happening in Georgia, I think a lot of voters may not know. I just got my absentee ballot, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so and there's an issue with our voting machines because in one category we have 20 candidates. So we have two open Senate seats. One is Purdue, right? David Perdue.
That's the
And
one they want to vote out. Okay, so Purdue can
and
vote
so
out.
he's run his 6 years. And so John Ossoff is running against him. So there's two, right? A Democrat and a Republican. On the other one, which is where Kelly Loeffler is now our senator, who was a replacement for Johnny Isakson. This is the end of his term, right? The governor appointed Loeffler. There are 20 people running for that seat. The top
Mm-hmm.
two Republicans, Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins, right? The top
Mm-hmm.
Democrat is Raphael Warnock, Reverend Warnock, right? However, there are, what I have 17 other people in that race, including several other Democrats. The
So
top two,
it's kind of a historic
yeah,
race because
the
Isaac was
top
in it forever.
two, the top two vote getters
Mm-hmm.
will go into a runoff in a special election. Doesn't matter if they're both Democrat, doesn't matter if they're both Republican.
And we just
So,
talked about a runoff
right.
election
And
that the
if
leader
one of
lost
them,
in 300
right,
votes.
if one of them gets 50% plus one vote, they immediately win the seat, right? So right now, it's Loeffler,
Mm-hmm.
Collins, the two Republicans, and Warnock, right? These are the top three. If he
For
can make
Isaac.
it, right, for Isaacson's seat, if he can make it up into the top two, right, which would probably be Loeffler and Warnock, they would have a runoff. But right now, as it stands, if we do not get a sizable turnout in Georgia, then
Mm-hmm.
we will have that second seat will be a Republican seat. Doesn't matter. It'll be between two Republicans in the special election, right?
What do you think about what's his name?
Ossoff, I think
Ossoff.
he's perfectly good. He was not my first choice there, but
Right.
I think he'll be fine. You know, I think he'll be qualified and do just fine.
Again, it's just
I can't
awful.
stand
And
Purdue.
here's right, because
I mean,
we've had
he
these
is entirely in the
Republican
pocket of Trump.
representation. Yeah, we've had the Republican representation. The
Yeah.
problem I had with, I can't ever say his name, off.
Isaacson?
The young guy, what's his name?
Ossoff, John Ossoff.
Ossoff, John Ossoff. The
OSS,
problem I have,
OFF,
right,
off.
the problem I have with him is seeing John Lewis in his commercial. And this is another stereotypical thing: is we continue to have people fed to the black vote as opposed to, we just don't
Right.
get a choice in the matter up front.
Right.
Like, who do we want? Who do we really want to run for that? It's like, oh, listen, hey, here's who we need to, herd. Let's herd everybody over here, and vote for this guy. Whereas I don't see a commercial. Like, come on, where's all the support for Raphael Warnock? I mean, this is his story. If this man wins, not only has he been out there on the ground for Medicaid and Medicare, senior citizens, and this historic community, and so forth. Where it's like Triana said, where's the party? Where's the Democratic Party? And making sure that we know what he's running for. It's like I keep seeing the commercials. I'm getting the commercials. I'm getting the mailings. I'm getting it all over my social media. But I'm like, I don't know what position. Like, I had a stack of this stuff. I'm like, man, I've got to do my research. What position is he running for, right?
And yes,
I mean, we're Facebook friends, okay? Well, and I'm like, dude,
yeah,
I don't know.
That's bad. And I tell you, when people go to vote on that seat, he's at the bottom. It's alphabetical. He's at the very end. Right?
Ooh, that's not gonna be good at all. And then you think about how the machine. I know you do the absentee voting. Yeah. I can't imagine all these names even fitting.
Well, this is the problem.
There may be a more tab.
No, and this is why they were having to reprogram the voting machines. There's a huge issue here in Georgia with the voting machines.
Yeah.
And my next month is going to be spent back really where I come out of political activism, which is on voter education, right? Yeah. This was me prior to Trump. I was very much into, rather than, not that I didn't support certain candidates, but to be very much about general voter education. Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to spend my next month educating people, mostly because of questions that I had, right? But the issue with the voting machines, we have two major issues a month before the election.
That may be my delivery. Let me get my dog. Okay. Yeah, my delivery. Hold on. Keep going. Talk.
Yeah, I'll keep talking. Is that we have this one race that has 20 candidates. And so they were trying to make it on the screen. The touch screen is, like an old computer monitor, right? Maybe about that big. And they were trying to make it do columns so that you could see all of them, just to the point that I was saying, that so you didn't have somebody lost down below. Well, when they tried to set up the columns, it didn't work every time. So certain machines were dropping out one of the columns. So certain names were getting dropped. So what I'm saying is they were trying to make the machines show stuff in columns, so it'd be on one page, and the machines were dropping a column. So so you're dropping out 5-6 names every time. So they need to reprogram that. And then they found out that their database was flawed. The database that they use when you go in to say, here I am ready to vote, and they're like, they didn't have people's registrations correct. They had people shown as deceased who were not. So they're having to totally redo this, and they will not have a whole lot of time to test it. So my advocacy around this is, I really want people to understand what their rights are regarding provisional voting and early voting. So if you're early voting and if you're going to do an absentee ballot, you have to be aware that there is an outer envelope that, first of all, has to be filled out correctly. It can be tricky. It's written in legalese, right? Got to read it very carefully, what information you have to put on the outside of that envelope, and it changes. You always have to put your county. Sometimes you have to put your street address, right? Like the little card you fill out, right? There's multiple places to sign, because if someone's helping someone with the ballot, they have to sign as well. Make sure you sign in the right place. Your signature that is on file from when you originally registered to vote is the signature that they compare it with. If you have not been voting absentee, your signature has probably changed unless you just registered. And so they will flag your ballot as invalid if
Mhm.
the signatures don't match. Now, typically what they do is they call you. So be aware if you get if you file that if you submitted absentee and you get a phone call from your county elections, it's probably not a spam thing. Hang up, go Google the number and call them
Yeah.
back, right?
Yeah.
And make sure it's right. But they will call you. Make sure that you put a phone number on there that is your correct contact number, right? They will call you and will say there's an issue with your signature, and you have multiple ways to fix that, right? If there's enough time in advance of the election, they will mail you a form for you to update your signature, right? If not, you go in person, you show your ID, you confirm your signature, right? So that's one ballot fix, right? If you show up to early vote, okay, so now let's say you're going to do early voting and they can't find you, right? You have two options. One is you can go to your local elections office, again, your county elections office, and get it straightened out, right? Or you can file a provisional ballot while you're and go back and vote, right? Or you can file a provisional ballot, which will be a paper ballot that is held aside until you go to the office, the elections office, and fix it. So I think people need to understand you may have to go to your county elections office at some point in this process, but that doesn't mean that you can't vote the day that you went to vote, right? Doesn't mean you can't do your ballot. And I'm not trying to scare people. I just think people need to know there are fixes for these things. But if
Mhm.
you if you are waiting until the last minute to mail a ballot, it's going to be very difficult to make that fix, right? Although you do have time after the election even to do the fix, right? But provisional ballots, everybody, wherever you are in this country, examine what your rights are regarding provisional balloting. Because if it's messed up at the poll, you still can vote that day. Your vote will count once you get it fixed, right? So I'm going to be talking about that, right? Because I think that, I mean, why would you need to know this? This is in the past has been so rare to
Right.
understand. I went through
Well,
this with my
we need to know it because who has not seen all of these issues come up when you're
it,
at the polling place? You see
absolutely,
a number of people come in and they say, "Hey, I went to this place. They told me to
yeah.
come over here.
And then they're like,
I'm not there." You've seen all of these things play out. Every scenario is a real scenario in this day and
and
time.
and this
And
is
so,
in particularly day of voting. If you are told you got to go somewhere else and it's 6:30, file a provisional ballot and work it
mhm,
out and get it worked out
mhm,
later. But it's all on the if you Google your county and the Secretary of State for your county or your elections, like I'm in Cobb County, Cobb elections,
mhm,
it will
mhm.
take you to the website that has all of the information.
Right.
And I'm recommending that people have it pulled up on their phone,
Well,
or have a
actually,
printout.
over on Facebook, and a number of viewers today are on Facebook, and actually, I'm going to open up over here. One that we're also broadcasting on YouTube for those of you who want to watch us on
Mm-hmm.
televisiones.
Thanks, Linda.
Um, but the thing about it is, I forgot what I was. I forgot what I was going to say because I'm going to open up the other place. Oh, on Facebook, if you go over
Mm-hmm.
under where your name is
Mm-hmm.
and where your memories and all that,
Mm-hmm.
more menu, click the three dots or the three lines. There is a section that shows you all of your representation through all of the
Mm-hmm.
bodies of government, down from national to local, from all the different branches. All the representatives are there. And I'm pretty sure everybody sees the outreach that's happening on Instagram right now, as well as Facebook, that are letting people know if you wondered it, when was the time to get an absentee ballot. Uh,
Right.
it had timelines on that. I opened my Instagram today, and it was telling me something. Belinda said she'd never heard of that. Belinda is got to get around a little bit more on social media. When I open, I'm going to see if it comes
Yeah.
up. There's something on Instagram when I was logging into Instagram earlier, and also when I open up my Facebook. Let me see if there's a little thing now.
Oh,
Now after I say it, it's not there.
yeah. Well,
But
while you're
across the
doing
top,
that,
yeah.
let me throw in one more thing to be aware of if you're doing absentee ballot. There's been some issues. I've not heard a lot in Georgia, but there's big issue in New York City that people are getting the wrong ballot. They're getting somebody else's ballot in the envelope, right? So your absentee ballot will have your name on the outside of it, and it will have an identifying number that is your tracking number, right? So that they can
Mm.
connect it to your registration. So make sure that the ballot that you get, it's got your name on it, right? So again, this is why you got to get started early. Now, if you didn't get started early, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that things can't be fixed, right? And look, this is going to be Angela's message from here on out, because I had to have a reckoning with myself, right? Because after last night, I was like, Lord help us,
Yeah.
and and I was just, I'm like, no, okay, somebody's got to hold a vision for the future, and it's got to hold a vision that it's going to be okay. And I had this discussion with I have a caregiver who is 19 years old, and she's a young Black woman. Her parents are of Caribbean descent, and I don't know if she's first generation or second generation, but just very, very lovely young woman. And we don't talk a lot of politics. She knows, she knew about me and Michelle. You're going to see Michelle Obama, and she's like, "Oh my God, wait till I tell my grandma you saw Michelle Obama." I'm like, "Oh, I'm probably her grandma's age," and so we've had little discussions like this. But last time she was here, she stayed. She wanted to talk. She wanted to talk about what was happening, and and as I started to talk to her, she's like, "I don't understand." She's, "I don't understand." It was right after RBG died, and she's like, "I don't understand why people want to take away other people's rights. Why do they care? And what's going to happen?" She said, "And I heard Trump saying he's not going to leave if he loses." And of course, I started to go into this, what I'm going to call Twitter mode, which is like, Trump, fuck Trump, pardon my French. And I thought, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is a young woman who is looking to me as an older woman, right? As a mentor, elder role. And she's looking at me. She wasn't afraid. She was just like confused. And I realized this is her first presidential election. She grew up under Obama. The only president she probably remembered prior to Trump was Obama. She would have been, what, 15 years old when Trump was elected. She grew up with a certain vision of what the presidency was supposed to be and the future was supposed to be. And I'm like, these young people had the rug ripped out from under them. And she's looking at me, and I thought, I got to be really careful what I say to her, which is to say, this is very serious and it really matters.
And that's why I started this asking you, as our generation, what do we do? Because we came under a generation that really just did not let us get involved.
No.
As we should have been. We had to find our own way, because that was their movement. What is ours? Because these kids are saying what happened.
And our generation was arcing, the arc of justice, the arc of history.
I just want to show this.
Go ahead and do that. I didn't mean to get you off that.
When you go on Facebook, it's called Town Hall. So I guess you can either find it by your name and scroll down and find Town Hall. Or you probably can just type in Town Hall. This is what mine looks like. It starts with David Scott, and then it goes to Perdue and Loeffler and Donald Trump and Mike Pence. Okay. And then it does. That's my federal representative. But then it also gives me my state. So it has your state on there. And then it also goes into other departments, government services. So government services are there as well.
Look at me. I'm basically, can you show us how you found it?
Yeah, down at the bottom there of your Facebook screen. See that the three lines. I'm trying to find it there. There we go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if I click those three lines, then that takes you into this menu behind, the menu there. And you just scroll down the menu and it takes you to Town Hall. You got to it depends on how your engagement is on Facebook, what you subscribe to here and there. Then you're going to get to a section called Town Hall. See that? And once you click Town Hall, and look up under Town Hall, what does that say?
I cannot read that, honey.
Voting Information Center.
Oh, yes.
Town Hall, and then Voting Information Center. And that's where, if you have any, supposedly, it depending on how legit Facebook is, 2020 U.S. Election Voting Information Center. Make sure you have a link there to make sure you are registered to vote. If you need to check your voter registration or register to vote, it has your absentee ballot information there. So this is what Facebook wanted to be. That's why Facebook wanted all your true personal information and not just your username, but to really have you document who you are. Early voting in person, it tells me where I can go. It says early voting in Georgia is open from October the 12th to October 30th. Dates may vary by location. It helps me to find my early voting info, see tips on early voting, get your ID ready. It also lets me check, it says check state requirements for ID. It talks about military. It also invites, lets you see opportunities to serve as a poll worker. That was something that you talked about, Angela. And then it gives me facts on voting. And then it says, you're all caught up. So that is why we wanted to close the digital divide, because everybody that has a phone, a device, or access to a Facebook, if you're on Facebook, all of that information is at your fingertips. And we know that there's so many people out there waking up today wondering, after seeing everybody else all up in arms, how do they make sure that they can participate in something that is their right, and that is getting ready to vote in the selection. We have got about 15 minutes left. We usually leave you guys at the 3 o'clock hour. Want to kind of trying to lighten up and talk about some of the I know, let's talk about the book club. And
Yes.
ladies, especially since we have such an audience with us today, and I hope everybody let's just take a deep breath. I know I've got a bunch of food over here I got to cook after this. Angela had us reading, and I finally finished Memorial Drive. I know we talked a little bit about it last week, but one of the reasons I want to talk about it this week, Angela, as you know, as I came on and I was saying, listen, stop trying to get Black women to fix this thing. Let me grab Belinda. Belinda said, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Belinda has put a whole scripture over there, y'all. Okay, but one of the reasons when I say, stop trying to get Black women to fix this, stop trying to get Black women to fix Trump and to win this election. When I was looking after finishing the book Memorial Drive by Natasha Trethewey, the reason she is able to garner publicity right now has to do with the fact that her book, that I guess the lane that they have her in is talking about these Confederate monuments and taking down the Confederate monuments as an expert on the book, and she's a professor and all these things, right? They're having her to talk about the fact that she's biracial, born in Mississippi. And so the way to get out there talking about a book, and most authors have to do this, you have to find something to talk about in order to go in all these places to talk about your book. So they're in the fact that her mother died on Memorial Drive, which goes up to Stone Mountain and all this kind of stuff. I just feel some kind of way that they made this book a memoir, because there's so many things in this book that could really turn some things, could open up some vaults in Atlanta. She talked police corruption. There's a little bit of hint of police corruption in her mother's case. And she talked about that. I still don't yet know who her mother was, but there's some prominence there that really isn't discussed, because if you in the book, it talked about her mother being invited to the Jimmy Carter inauguration. That meant that she had to be connected to a lot of people we just finished talking about. Was it something political? Why is it this one woman gets to do a memoir about her life and her mother's murder? So I'm still investigating. But please, guys, go out. A number of people, a number of book groups, a number of groups online are now reading this book. There was also some mention of a case with the Atlanta murders. Okay, in this, when the stepfather. Oh, I don't want to spoil it, but guys,
I think it's on the cover that this is about the murder by the stepfather. I don't think that's right.
Okay, so the murder by the stepfather, but in the transcript, the stepfather who murdered her mother mentions that he may have done a crime, right? And some people were saying, well, I think he mentioned that because he just wanted to scare her. But I don't know.
Yeah.
He mentioned the crime that
That's
happened during the Atlanta murders, and that was a actual explosion at a daycare center in a particular part of town where there had been several other murders. And so there's that in there. And I don't understand why we're talking about this book as a memoir when it looks to me like it has some keys to some things that went on in early
well,
Atlanta.
and to that point, you can tell that the author Natasha Trethewey this is
Mm-hmm.
all still raw to her, and she, part of the memoir, part of it is that she blanked it out of her memory. She was just like, she deadened herself to a part of her life that
Mm-hmm.
she had to go back and excavate because she literally had done a brain wipe, and you can see that she's still raw and in it. Right? This is not the story of someone who's resolved it. This is the process of resolving. She talks about her own process in the writing of it. This is her trying to resolve it, and it is unresolved to her in her heart and mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of really fully what happened. She still bears responsibility when she was a child, feeling like she's responsible for her mother's death. That now that she is she's our age, she's exactly our age, right? That she's in her 50s and she's still carrying that wound of childhood. So it could be that she just wasn't able to explore that part. Maybe that'll be her next
Mm-hmm.
book, is to take the transcript and the police
Well,
records, or somebody will take
it
that and
goes.
investigate it,
Well,
because it may not be, she
here's
just may
the
not be able
thing.
to stand it.
I went back because while she was working on the book, there were the poetry that was coming out. She was a
Yeah,
poet,
she's
right?
a poet laureate. Yeah.
But there was some poetry that she actually published before
Mm-hmm.
she finished this book. One of the reasons I want us to pay attention to this book and continue to talk about it going forward is because starting tomorrow is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yeah.
My next book that I chose to go into was Mariah Carey's memoir,
Mm.
um, which also speaks to domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
She believing that her marriage to Tommy Mottola
Yeah.
was abuse, and not only that, there were certain things that she talked about in her childhood, things that she never did block them out. She lived with them. That things that happened to her mother and her sister. You never hear Mariah
Mm-hmm.
Carey talk about siblings, right?
Right.
Sisters and brothers. She had a situation where she really believed her sister tried to pass her off to a pimp.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
Yeah. And how long? And see, this is the part. This is why I tell people, tell your story.
Yes.
Because how long have we said something about Mariah Carey ain't
Mm-hmm.
all there? She is not
Mm-hmm.
all there. And now I'm just chapters into this book, and I got it on warp speed because I got to get through this. But when
Mm-hmm.
I hear all the stuff, who she's trying not to be the mom. The mom, her mother was white. Her father was black. And she talked about the abuse of friends. She talked about she has a group of friends, and she finally got to go with them off to their, well-to-do estate. But when she got there, they had planned to torture her,
Oh my
because
God.
because they had found out, because kids been trying to process, here's this girl with this mother who's white,
Mm-hmm.
something's quite different from her. And this is another thing with our generation, Angela, because we think about Natasha Trethewey, she talks about being born into a biracial family, which
Mm-hmm.
was actually illegal. So
Yeah.
the whole biracial generation, there are people our age in their 50s now that are discovering. There's a whole documentary that was on Netflix, and I rewatched it the other day, where this young woman, was raised in a Jewish family, just thinking that she was Jewish, and had that old thing of, oh, you just look like a long distance relative,
Right.
But and there's so many, the real truth to the family, and I'm waiting on them to come out and say this is the only reason her father. I don't want to say it like that. It seems like to me, okay, the only reason her father might have gone along with her mother's tale of getting pregnant by this guy who was not her father is simply because I think he was gay.
Mm.
And so you have, again, a parallel time of men not being able to come out,
Yeah.
in families where they are not necessarily the fathers of these kids, but everybody was just going along with it. So she went back, and this other story, and I can't think of the name of it. I blogged about it. She went back. She got to a young adult, got ready to go off to college, and when she went, I think she went to maybe even Howard or whatever, and discovered like, no, you're not Jewish. I mean, you're Jewish because that's your religion,
right?
But you're black. Your hair is the way. Even Mariah Carey, and you and I were going to talk about this new trend of women discovering their curly hair, not natural hair like black women. So this is why black women are like, we're not going to fix this for y'all because y'all didn't want to do this at the same time we were out here trying to figure this stuff. We got to talk about it. We're going to have a whole show on us doing these things at the same time. So here, this young woman, even Mariah talked about discovering this thing about her hair, but she knew that she was mixed. Here's a young lady who literally had been lied to all of her life. She literally thought she was white. This thing with her hair had to do with some long distance relative. Mind you, a relative of her father, the man who really wasn't her father. So you really don't look like his relative. But what your mother, because remember we talked about silence. Within silence is protection. Yeah. I'm like, her mother is not silent because she had an affair. Her mother had an affair because she didn't have a sexual relationship with her husband, obviously. Okay. Right. So, but her mother went on with the lie. Okay, I'm going to pretend like my daughter is his daughter because the real truth is not that I went out and had an affair. The real truth is that this man couldn't face his family and be homosexual in his religion. So therefore he took a wife. I had to pretend to be his wife. I still needed what I needed. And I felt, and because the guy that she had the baby by would come to their house and sit there for dinner. I'm like, how are y'all sitting around the dinner table and your child looked just like this man? Right. And this is what her friends, she went back and interviewed all of her friends growing up. She was like, well, why didn't you guys say anything? Because nobody says anything. You did. Some of her friends were like, well, yeah, we kind of asked you, but you kept saying you were this and you look like the great grandmother and all of this stuff, you know. I mean, hell, even when Meghan married Prince William, what did the Queen say? Hey, look, we had one of you before. You're like her. And it's like, oh my God, y'all. Go out there and get these books. Mariah Carey is so honest and open and so frank in this book. And it really gives a great understanding. But I'm like, how have you gone all this time with people calling you crazy? Because we always thought Mariah was like weird. But whoa, here is her
and
story.
Just as a side note, one of the first celebrities I ever saw, Mariah Carey and Tommy Mottola. I was in upstate New York visiting some friends, very rural New York. And there was one mall. We were walking through the mall, and they're like, "There's Mariah Carey and Tommy Mottola," and because they had a house up there, and they would come to that mall all the time.
Which she calls a prison. She calls that.
You know what?
Can you imagine?
She looked like a prisoner. I mean, when I saw her. She looked.
But that was the perception of their marriage.
She looked like
she was a prisoner.
She looked like she was there against her will. I would say
she was there against her will.
Tommy Mottola.
She says that in the book.
I saw that in her, and like literally, he was on top of her, right? Like he's right by her, and so you go, oh well, he's just protecting her from fans or whatever. And it's like, no, he was keeping her in control in a public space, right, to make sure that she was never out of his sight.
Some of that. We'll talk about that next week. We'll play some of that. Yeah.
I mean, but like I say, it was like a
but see, here's the problem though, Angela, and we do have to go. Okay, we gotta go. But here's the problem: is it was all about perception that something was wrong in that marriage.
Yeah.
But look how much
he was old enough to be her grandfather.
Right. I mean, look how much we were told it wasn't the case. Right. We're seeing things out here. Look how many times we have said Trump is a white supremacist. And everybody's like, oh no, that can't be. Listen, y'all, your eyes are not fooling you. Okay?
And this is it. And your instinct is not fooling you. This is what gaslighting. This is gaslighting 101. But it is, as women, we are taught to take that natural instinct that we have, this natural intuition that we have. All people have it, right? But women tend to be more into it. More attached, more tuned in as children, And we're told to deny that. We're told, no, you're wrong. You're just imagining things. And so
Yeah.
it's that thing, as we're as a little
This
girl, and you
this
just
is your
think,
this is your words of
this
wisdom.
is my words of wisdom. And you think, that man right there is not, I don't want to be around him. Go hug your uncle. I want to hug I don't want to hug him. Go hug your uncle. That little girl knows what that uncle's about. And we learn to suppress that. So then so then you get
We're
grown,
forced
and
to
you're
suppress it.
right. And then you're constantly turning that off in yourself, right? And then going after the fact, I knew it. It's okay. We've got to reclaim that. And I think we are. So that's my leading women words of
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah.
Trust your intuition. You're right.
Yeah.
You are.
There you
I
go.
promise you're right.
All right. So if I may suggest a book for next
Yes.
month, it would be Mariah Carey's
Okay.
what is it called? Let me see if I'm gonna get it so I can show it to you guys on screen so you can go and get it. You should have, if you're gonna join us on the book club, you should have your Audible subscription on this. Get your subscription. This is the meaning of Mariah Carey, and there it is right there. It is good. It is good. And also too, because you really get to see how much of a boss she was in the music game, and some of the decisions that she made is why she is still on top today.
And she reads it. She does the reading.
Yes, she does, honey. I have it almost on a 1.9 speed.
Wow.
But it is, I'm getting through it. It was like an 11-hour. I said, I'm like, wow,
good Lord.
5. I've already done 7 hours. I got about 5, so it may be more than 11.
Yeah.
5 hours to go.
Any memoir read by the person who wrote it is good.
Well, no, that's not the case.
Well,
because some of them, no. But this
read.
one, and she sings before each chapter comes on. But also for anybody that's in love with the music industry and want to know about it, she gives you some really good insight as to how she had to command herself in that. And one of the things she did over Tommy Mottola is really to own her music, because he didn't walk away with all of her stuff. Okay. In the what's that? We gotta go. But for color girls who consider suicide when the rainbow is enough, if somebody got away with all my stuff, ladies, keep your stuff this week. Okay, keep your stuff. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much. It's been a great conversation. We spent a great number of time on the debate. I think we worked it out. We gave you some great information.
Thanks to everybody who joined us. Thank you so much for jumping
in. Lots of new viewers this week, and lots of great comments and so forth. This will immediately after we hit the stop button, it becomes a podcast. So if you want to catch other episodes, just have something in your ear, you can catch it as a podcast. And even on the podcast, you can leave comments. It's added to the podcast so people can hear you. Like I know you were in the comment section, but if you want to do it in an audio, like drop us an audio. Follow the links to hashtag Leading Women Weekly, or go to leadingwomenweekly.com. That's where the podcast, additional broadcasts are available on my YouTube channel, as well as we have a page on Facebook called Leading Women Weekly, and you can see other episodes. And we'll be back with you guys next week. Also, lastly, the show is always brought to you by Dryer Buzz and our soaps as well. That's our merchandise. So please go and check that out. All right, everybody. Angela, stay right there. We'll tell everybody bye.
Bye.